Welcome back to the She Thrives Influential Women podcast. I am your host, Lori Murphy, and I am an empowerment coach for women, public speaker, award-winning published co-author, as well as columnist for the Rochester Women Online magazine. And thank you so much for joining me today. If you are new to this podcast and you haven't done it just yet, click that subscribe button. Never miss another episode. Download your favorite episode, leave a review, keep this podcast going, share it with women in your lives who you may find an episode on this podcast or multiple, rated relatable to their journeys. That is the purpose of this podcast. It is a sisterhood. It is a community. It is a place for women to come and get that positive influence, hear about health and wellness, personal growth and development, and all the things that'll help them thrive in their lives. And today I have a very special guest, Summer Watson. I am so excited to have Summer here. We are going to dive into a very important and essential topic, but let me tell you a little bit about Summer. Dr. Summer Watson is a high school performance coach, doctor of psychology, podcaster, event producer, live show host, author, mentor, and military spouse of over 21 years. Dr. Watson is also the owner of Core Women, which supports companies to develop thriving cross-generational leadership and mentorship programs, fostering healthy and sustainable communities. Core stands for how we kinetically connect, organically learn, and from one another, reshape lives through diverse interaction, and empower one another to promote change, which are values that run through everything Dr. Watson does, from running her business, podcasting, to creating community events and community development. Dr. Summer Watson, how are you doing today?
I am doing good. And just so I clarify, I am a high performance coach, empowerment coach. Did that say high school on it? That's okay. You know,
If it
I
did,
will.
if it did, I may have, no.
So that's okay. So we're
You
here.
we're not editing that because we want everyone to know too that, sometimes we just oops in life.
We really do, and I have a podcast and I oops a lot of times, man. And I've been doing it for 7 years. and
It's
and you know what? If I can inspire and empower high school young women, those that are in high school, perfect. Because I love that age. I love that
yes.
demographic. So woohoo,
Yes.
if you're
Me
listening to
too.
this podcast, join in,
Yes.
ask questions.
Absolutely. I love it. And thank you for giving me the space to say, yeah, I messed up.
That's okay. Yeah, that's okay. That's all right.
Oh,
So yeah, I'm
Summer,
excited.
yeah, so tell us a little bit about where you're from and a little bit about who you are that and what led you into the work that you are doing today.
Oh, such a good question. Deep question. Good question. So I am originally from California. I was born and raised there, grew up there. Um, I left and went back and forth because of being a military spouse for 21 years. We are currently living outside of Washington, D.C. and Northern Virginia today. But as I was growing up in California, some of the things and some of the, big things that really helped me evolve in life and challenged me and made me more resilient was one of the things was when I was 6 months old. I was not born with, but I had a spontaneous perforation in my small intestine.
Mm.
And so when that happened, my young mom at 19, she had her first child, my brother at 17. At 19, she kept taking me back and forth to the doctor. And they'd say, she's got a cold, she's got the stomach flu. And then the last time she took me into the doctor, I ended up going into a coma. They ended up
Mm.
racing me to the emergency room where they took me and started doing exploratory surgery to find out what was going on. And I was completely septic. And because all of everything that I was eating was going through that hole. The problem was I was always a good baby, never really fussed, never really cried. So they didn't really think much. They just thought, oh, she's just probably got a cold. She's probably got a, and they didn't really delve into it. One or two, they were talking to a young woman and didn't really value what she had to say.
Mm.
Three, it was, the time. I was born in 1969, so it was 1969 in Anaheim, California. So who knows? It could have been a combination of these things. But let me tell you, the reason I explain this is because throughout my life, because of that one incident, I had surgery after surgery after surgery, which actually ended in when I was 34. It could happen anytime because as I grow or as things develop, adhesions develop inside, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so they would surround organs, and I couldn't
Mm.
get potty, I couldn't do this, I couldn't do that. Anyway, long story short, at 34, I ended up having a complete hysterectomy, which meant no kids, no
Oh,
bio
yeah.
kids. So there was a lot of loss, a lot of growth, a lot of things that I had to learn how to work through.
Oh,
And
sure.
from that and other life issues, um, I went off to college at 18, raised by a single mom, went to Berkeley and, you know, was driven and a leader and became sorority president and worked 30 hours a week and took 17 years a semester. And from there, I jumped into my profession, and that was human services and psychology. And so I ended up evolving into getting a master's in human services with a specialty in community counseling, where I helped individuals, um, couples, groups, communities really develop things that they needed and how to
Mm.
get those things, right? How to develop those things in their life. And then also, then took a turn into clinical psychology, which all these things again helped me grow
Mm-hmm.
as a human being too, and pick
Mm-hmm.
up skills to learn through my life that I could apply. That really helped me get through A, B, or C, right? And
Right.
so I went into clinical psychology and I started working in hospitals, assessing people who were homicidal, suicidal, and gravely disabled. And at the end of my husband's career in the Marine Corps, he was in the Marine Corps for 21 years. So get this, we would move every 3 to 4 years, where I would then have to find another job and have to do A, B, or C. I decided I wanted to start my own business. And when he retired and he got a job in DC, it was time. It was time for
Mm-hmm.
me to start a business. And that's when I developed Core Women.
That's amazing. And tell us a little bit more about, I mean, your bio kind of dove in a little bit to what core women is, but from your words, from you, tell us all about core women and what led you to start it.
Okay. So in 2018, when my husband finally retired from the Marine Corps, and here's the thing, I grew up in the 80s. So I was the kind of young woman who watched like Baby Boom, Working Girl, like all these great movies
I
because,
loved Baby Boom. That was the epic movie.
and I loved Working Girl and Baby Boom because I looked at these women and thought, they're doing it. Can I do it? Can I
Mm-hmm.
break that glass ceiling? Can I be invited to that table? Can I? And I did it for years and years through every single move. And
Mm.
I did it in nonprofit, for profit, government, contracting work. So I've gotten a real wide range and exposure to a lot of different environments, work
Mm-hmm.
environments. And so through that, when my husband retired, I thought to myself, it's time to sit down and reflect. It's time to do your own personal assessment and determine what is it that you want? How do you want to forge your journey, the evolution of your journey from here on out? And that
Mm-hmm.
could change still, right? But I thought,
Right.
how about starting your own business? How about creating a space, because I loved community development,
Mm-hmm.
and I did a lot of that in nonprofit and throughout my years of work. So I thought, well, how about I create a space for women, one, to learn and grow from my coaching, one,
Mm-hmm.
two, but by creating a podcast. Didn't know how to podcast, but just jumped right in. It's been 7 years, over 350 episodes. And here I am podcasting for the last 7 years, and it featured incredible women from all backgrounds, multiple countries, from, personal backgrounds, professional backgrounds. It's been amazing. And so
Yes.
create these safe spaces so we can have these conversations, we can grow together. I also have created seminars, conferences where I didn't just bring women together, but the conferences were for men as well and
Hmm.
professionals so we can learn from each other. My last one was about 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, called GritCon, which stood for Growth, Resiliency, Intention, and Transformation and Connection. GritCon, and it was in San Diego, and it was fantastic. People flew out from everywhere, and I met a lot of people on social media
I love it.
and just face to face, and they flew out for this conference. And so now those connections, those social media connections, I know them in real life. We
Yeah.
spend time together. I've actually been with some of the people who are in California, New York, other places. I've gone to visit them and
Yes.
develop those relationships. And as a matter of fact, some of those people are currently co-collaborating with me with my company and a new program that I developed with my company. So right now I have a core group of people who work with me on this new program, and then I have 20 facilitators who contract with me.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I want to hear about this this program, this method. What is it? Because I believe that we were talking a little bit about it before we started the episode, and I really want to dive into that.
Let's dive into that. So that's my new signature program is called Core Mentorship Solutions. And with my research background, being a doctor of clinical psych, PhD, lots of research, I decided to research something that was very dear to my heart, and that's mentorship. And
Hmm.
throughout my life, I've had some incredible mentorship mentors, and I've needed those mentors. And I absolutely love those mentors at all different points in my life. And so I thought
Hmm.
to myself, how can we, with 5 generations going on 6 generations being in the workforce, how can we really create a mentorship program that's horizontal, that's flat in its structure?
Hmm.
Because a lot of companies will have a more of a hierarchical structure, right?
Hmm.
And that's okay. But when it comes to mentorship and when it comes to moving forward and really helping, companies attain their mission,
Hmm.
what's going to help that more effectively? Well, there are
Right.
a few things with those 5 generations, and with so many social issues that have gone on in our life, like COVID, like kids being isolated, learning from technology or having that medium to learn from, right? And not
Hmm.
being going into work in person. Like, how can we change this dynamic in relation to mentorship, in relation to the workforce? What does this look like today? And when I was finding and reading articles and doing my research, that a lot of these younger generations were graduating from college, getting out of high school, wanting a trade or wanting to go into a profession, and they were getting hired, but they were getting fired quickly. And I was
Hmm.
like, okay, what are we doing wrong? What's the problem we
Mm.
need to solve here, right? And one of the
Right.
things is what I found, or what I believe to be an issue, is a lot of our young folks don't know systems because they were so isolated, because they didn't have time to work in a high school system, a junior high system. They were at home, they were doing
Hmm.
school via, technology versus like co you know creating, collaborating, being together, creating these relationships, understanding emotional intelligence, all these things, right?
Right.
I thought, well, how can we do a better job of teaching them about these systems? But wait, before that, how can we do a better job of creating safe spaces
Hmm.
where ego's out of the picture, where we can actually have conversations
Ooh.
about A, B, and C? Because
Right.
if we don't create these safe spaces, then how are we really communicating? How are we listening to each other? Because I do feel like I had some great mentorship, but I also feel
Hmm.
like that was more of, now, and I look at it more of a legacy mentorship where your mentoring came from the elder.
Yes.
their wisdom, the length of time they've been in the profession. And that's fantastic. And I'm not minimizing that. But
Mm-hmm.
what I do believe, because we have so many generations out there right now, is that we need to make that more horizontal, flat structure, get ego out of the way so that we can have what not reverse mentorship, but a mentorship where we take out mentee, the word mentee, where everybody becomes a mentor.
Mm-hmm.
These young folks were hired for a reason, their
Right.
technology, their creation, their creative abilities, whatever it is. But if we're not allowing them to talk or feel heard or feel belong, like have a sense of belonging in these
Mm-hmm.
places, guess what's going to happen? They're going to shut down, they're going to isolate, they're going to quit.
Yeah.
So how do we bring in all those generations and understand that we need to break those stereotypes, stop stereotyping, start understanding each other, start co-collaborating, co-creating, and communicating more effectively. So I
Mm-hmm.
came up with a method, the core mentorship solutions method.
Wow. Let's hear about the method.
So the
So what are the
method.
steps?
Okay, so the steps. So thanks for asking. So I'd be meeting with a company or, somebody, a point person with that company. And as I meet with them, I talk to them about their various issues that
Mm-hmm.
they're having, the gaps that they're recognizing that they can't overcome necessarily. Then I take them through, if they're interested in the program, then I take them through a consultation and a assessment that's proprietary to the program. I
Mm-hmm.
have done assessments for years on thousands of people because
Mm-hmm.
of being a clinician in hospitals, right? So getting to
Right.
understand from multiple variables what's influencing behavior. And so
Mm-hmm.
I thought I would put together my own assessment and walk the company point person through this assessment to get a better understanding of what is going on. And there's multiple variables that we address as we take them through that assessment.
Mm-hmm.
Once I evaluate that assessment, then I can go back to the company point person and say, here's what I identified as some of the issues. Because never do I want, and even working long ago in community when I did community collaborations or I built out community programs with community members, I didn't go in there and start bulldozing, going, hey, this is what needs to happen. That's when it needs to happen. This is the timeline. Because quite frankly, that doesn't work.
Right.
It just doesn't work. And so
Mm-hmm.
you want to create an assessment to better understand the community that you're working with. So
Mm-hmm.
once I am able to evaluate that with that point person, then we go through that and we go through it and see where the gaps are. Then I suggest bringing in leadership trainers to help better bridge those gaps, right?
Sure.
And
Mm-hmm.
so those trainers, those are the people who work with me, who are consultants with my company, who come in. And I vetted all of these people. They're amazing. They're from all different backgrounds and all different ages, which is something I really love because what I tried to do is mirror what our expectation is for the company in relation to a cross generational mentorship program. And then
Right.
we also take them through that, bring in those trainers, and then we also, because it's a high touch program, we help them implement a mentorship program into their system. And
Oh.
so, with that said, there's an opportunity for every employee to be involved. There's an opportunity for every employee to be a mentor and share knowledge and to understand better how to break down stereotyping, how to break down communication silos, and to bridge gaps where there's difficulty or where they're having some hardships in
Yeah.
the company and in those systems.
Right. And if you remove the stereotypes and you put all of these people with different backgrounds, different ages into a room, and if they all came together and collaborated together, you could move mountains because the people who have been doing it for 30 years, they can tell you how it works and how to do it. But then you got the people from the younger generation who can add their knowledge of technology and using more up-to-date in resources that the older generation, or I should say the more experienced generation may not know. Because if you combined it all together, from the old to the new and bring it into the current, I feel like you could do so much. And, not only do you thrive together, but the company thrives all together.
Absolutely. And they can better meet their mission. And you're right, they can move mountains if they're open to it.
Yes.
And that's, we've been through that as humans, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I know you've had your own experiences, Lori, where it wasn't until you were open to change that you made those changes, right?
Exactly.
And so,
Exactly.
again, that works for a system, a company, if they're open to it. Are you willing to get a 23% increase in your mission, in your income, in the development of your product or service because you've implemented a cross generational or intergenerational mentorship program? Are you ready for that? Because that's what happens. That's what studies say is happening, right? When you
Yes.
do that, it's like older models are great. And the reason I say that this is also not a reverse mentorship program is because when we're looking at the factor of ego and also power and control, I'm not putting power back onto somebody else with a reverse mentorship program, like a young person to say, well, this is the way I do it, and da 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 da, and here's my wisdom, right? No, it's shared knowledge. That's
Mm-hmm.
why I'm saying it's a shared relationship. It's something where, again, we're trying to minimize the ego because you're not going to take ego out of the picture completely,
No,
right?
you're not.
You're not. But and we need a little bit of that to push back a little bit, to like, to understand one another, to test one
Right.
another to a certain degree, to see what our resilience is, because people are going to naturally do that. But
Yes.
if we are able to create those spaces where the safe spaces where that can happen, where they can have those meaningful and real authentic conversations, guess what? We're going to have more co-creation, better communication. We're going to develop and really reach that mission. Now you're talking to also a military wife of 21 plus years. So when I
Yep.
talk about mission and values, that's so important. If your company actually knows your mission, understands those values, and you're able to express that
Yep.
to those people who work for your company
Mm-hmm.
and those expectations, but also bring something in to create spaces for that communication, for
Mm-hmm.
that innovation, it's going to help. It's
Yes.
going to be a success. You're going to be a success. Your company's going to be more of a success. And I've
Yes.
seen it happen. I've seen it
Yes.
happen in community building. So
Yep.
this doesn't come out of nowhere. This also has an infusion of psychology into it. I'm a
Mm-hmm.
very, I'm very much an Adlerian practitioner. So
Okay.
Alfred Adler, I don't know if you know who Alfred Adler is, but
I
Alfred
do.
Adler is a derivative of Freud. And
Mm-hmm.
Alfred Adler said, hey, to Freud, you know what? I'm going to have to break off. Thank you for, providing your wisdom, your knowledge, this great system that you've created. But I think there's more. I think there's more than the subconscious. I think there's more than the psychosexual. I think there's more that contributes to our behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And so he became the first holistic psychiatrist, psychologist, to practice and
Mm-hmm.
develop humanistic approaches.
Right.
And so, what he looked at are multiple variables that
Mm-hmm.
influence behavior, which is why I absolutely loved Alfred Adler. And so, I infused that because one of the things that he says is when you feel like you don't belong in a community,
Mm-hmm.
start depressing, you fall out, you start, creating a distance between
Mm-hmm.
you and that community. And
Mm-hmm.
so, with that said, there are certain strategies that we can use to help really influence behavior in
Yeah.
regards to people feeling like they belong.
That's amazing. It's amazing. I think that this is going to be a game-changing method for corporations if they're willing to go through the change. And it might be hard changes when we have to bring all of these everyone together to work together. I don't I feel like it's a disservice for the younger generation to just give up so easily on them and just, kick them out to the curb, especially when they're still learning, they're still trying, and they could really benefit from learning from the people who have been in this, field for, however many years, 30 years, or more or less. They have the experience and, they also have to come from a place of willingness to educate and lead. And I don't know if that's something that I do see that in. in a lot of conversations I have with people in different fields, especially, but I've seen it in my full-time career in dentistry where there's no leadership, there's no guidance. It's you're expected to know the second you walk in the door. You know, I have 24 years in dentistry, and I'm expected to know how an office works the second I walk in the door. But every office has different protocols, does everything different. I've never worked for a doctor who has done the same thing the same way.
Absolutely.
So there's always a learning curve. And I think that it sets people up for failure if you don't come from a place of understanding and willingness to lead and teach and educate. And I think that this is an awesome method because I think it helps teach everybody across the board. It's not just for younger generation, it's for everybody so that you all can thrive and you can increase the outreach of the mission and its success.
Absolutely. I love how
It's
you
powerful.
sum that up. It is exceptionally powerful. And let me tell you, I have worked for 30 plus years in the human services field. And like you said, you go into different dentist office, it's a different system. Now,
Hmm.
if you go into a work environment, that's your first time going into a work environment. Yeah, we've all been there.
Hmm.
Okay. We've all been there. And you might hear some people go, well, I did it. They can do it. They can overcome it. But here's the thing,
Hmm.
there's different variables that have influenced those younger folks' behavior and
Hmm.
what they know or what their limited knowledge is of because of things that have happened in this world that they didn't have control over, like
Yep.
COVID,
Yep.
right? And so it's like when they're going into these new environments and they feel like, wow, I don't even know who to ask questions to. I don't know where to get information.
Hmm.
Nobody's telling me about the system and how it works. They're making me feel like an outsider. I don't know how to be part of.
Hmm.
Anything's going to happen. They're going to
Right.
leave. They're going to shut down.
Yep.
So why
I've
are
done
we
it.
uh, right? And why are we doing this disservice to our younger folks, or even to anybody that comes in there that doesn't have that type of work experience, but they have different skill sets that are going to help your company thrive? You
Yep.
hired them for a reason.
Yeah.
Help
And
keep them there.
And then they're going to go start their own, social media influencing business and they're going to start selling items on TikTok and they're just not going to be in the workforce anymore. And then companies go under because they don't have the staff. It's a vicious cycle when you think about it.
Well, it is. And plus, these are our leaders of tomorrow. These are the leaders. So why don't our
Yes.
leaderships today want to start harnessing, these younger folks, these different generations, and nurturing them to the degree that there's
Yes.
open communication, there's open innovation, there's open, ideas to really be successful in the mission. I've had a
Yes.
grandfather who I really looked up to. He was an incredible entrepreneur. He was a
Hmm.
tough guy. He was a multimillionaire and he created from a lot of trial a dirt and soil business. Okay. He was not college educated. He was, yes, book smart, magazine smart. He did his research. Let me tell you, that man did his research. And I thought, you have got the drive. But he was kind of scary too, right? Because he was driven, he was a go-getter, and he wanted it his way. And so
Mm.
I think when I looked at that, and even still, like not inviting his daughters to be leaders in that company, they could be secretaries,
Hmm.
but he didn't want them as leaders in that. And I'm thinking, wow, that's a little antiquated. However, I looked up to him with, because he had this skill set to
Yep.
make something work,
Right.
right? But I look at that company, I thought, wow, when he turned about 80, now this man was still water skiing at 70 plus, right? He was still, he didn't take many vacations because he loved to work. But he, if he at about 80 something, he started, having symptoms of Alzheimer's. So he put his son in charge. And so that business started shifting a little bit with the other generations coming in and saying, here's some different ideas where we might shift from using soil um, to different forms of growing because
Hmm.
he provided systems for growing in agriculture, in
Hmm.
fields, in personal agriculture. If somebody wanted to grow flowers or a vegetable garden, you would go into like a Kmart or maybe a Home Depot and you would see their product in or their bags, but it would be his product. So
Hmm.
it's like he did a lot, but I also feel as I look back on it, he could have done even better if he understood and listened to the different generations. So,
Yes.
anyhow, so I look at this and think, well, I love some of that modeling and his
Yep.
drive and his tenacity and his resiliency. But how do we invite that innovation, that young blood into this and
Yeah.
listen with open hearts and open minds?
That's amazing. I love it.
Thank you.
I think it's fantastic. And I love hearing about your grandfather. And, he did sound like a very, very driven man to build what he built. And it's inspiring, you know.
I mean, and you know
Um,
the story from going from, being drafted in the military to driving a cab to buying a ranch to a chicken ranch to selling off that ranch to foster farm and all the chickens to foster farm. And then understanding that he needed to get rid of all the feces that the chickens would have. And so he took it to a mushroom factory, right? And
hmm
that mushroom factory then had all that stuff to grow mushrooms and cultivate mushrooms. Well, then he thought, well, how do I work with that company to infuse mushrooms into the compost to,
Oh.
enrich the soil? How do I use peat moss from Canada to enrich the soil? How do I go and make these and create these relationships where
Hmm.
I can start working with scientists to develop these new products, right? To help, he was from California.
Yeah.
So that was huge agriculture out there.
Yes.
So again, how can he help these farmers create soils that are going to really grow more enriched product, right?
Sure.
And how can you also help that individual, um, you know, vegetable grower, like, from a personal perspective,
Right.
grow their garden? And
Yep.
so he was very, very, very innovative, driven. And so just looking at that, yeah, he was a role model for me.
That's fantastic.
Thank
And
you.
here you are using, things, your own education, your own research to build this amazing method that I really do feel is going to help so many corporations.
Thank
And
you.
I'm excited to see what happens, along the way as you continue to utilize it and introduce it to other companies. Now, if there's anybody from a company listening right now and they want to get a hold of you, how can they find you, Summer?
Well, they can find me on LinkedIn at Summer Watson, MHS PhD. They can also go to Core Women, that's KORE women.com, and they can check out Core Mentorship Solutions and they can reach me through that as well. So yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. And I'll be sure to share the links below in the description, along with my links. If there's any way I could be of, support through anybody in their journey, please feel free to reach out to me. Summer, thank you so much for taking the time to come with me or come visit with me today. Share your knowledge with the world, and I am so excited for this method and what's going to transpire from it.
Thank you so much. It has been a wonderful conversation. Thanks.
Yes, it has. And I'm sad that we have to end it. But we should certainly have you come back again to dive
Okay.
into more details and talk more about, other works that you've been doing.
Okay.
You're a
Because
very inspirational woman.
as are you.
Thank you. And thank you so much, everybody, for taking the time to listen. And until next time, let go of fear and let your spirit shine.